Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. As I mentioned in last week's podcast, my guest was supposed to be my friend and fellow 1970s Dallas Cowboys fan, Dave Depaola. But unfortunately, we had some major technical issues. Thankfully, I do have Dave's comments down on paper, so although it will not be as good as actually hearing Dave's voice, it is undoubtedly better than just scrapping the whole thing. We left off last week with the second quarter about to begin, so we'll pick it up from there. On second down and 10, Tarkenton threw a long pass to John Gilliam, but cornerback Mark Washington reached in and knocked the ball away. A 15-yard pass to Jim Lash was enough for the first down. Tarkenton tried another long pass to John Gilliam, but again, Mark Washington had good coverage and the pass fell incomplete. A completion to John Gilliam followed a 3-yard run, but Gilliam could not get full possession of the ball before stepping out of bounds. The Vikings were offside on the punt, and Dallas accepted the 5-yard penalty, forcing Minnesota to punt it again. It turned out to be a costly decision. Return man Cliff Harris signaled for a fair catch, but was interfered with, which should have been a penalty. We discussed this play, Dave, and you mentioned that you thought the Vikings player might have been pushed into Harris. I looked at it in slow motion, and that was not the case. I can't tell who that Vikings player was, but Cowboys' Benny Barnes was behind him. I'm not sure why Barnes chose to get that close to him, but he did not push him. Rookie offensive tackle Pat Donovan, perhaps thinking the ball had touched Barnes, which it almost did, dove for it, mishandled it, and the Vikings recovered it on the 4-yard line. Dave commenting, "Yeah, I remember that play. Pat Donovan was one of the Dirty Dozen guys." Mark commenting again, "That's right, Dave. The announcers for the game were Gary Bender and Johnny Unitas. Bender mentions that the Vikings came close to running into Harris, but in all the excitement of the fumble, it's quickly forgotten and not mentioned again." Dave commenting, "Gary Bender called a lot of Cowboys games over the years. Unitas was good and brought up a lot of interesting points, but sometimes he talked over Bender. If that were today, they would have a 5-minute discussion on it. Back then, you didn't make a big deal of it. It was like, okay, the guy made a bad call, and you lived with it and moved on. There wasn't even a protest on the field." Mark commenting, "Well, we don't know, because unlike today, there weren't 1,000 cameras everywhere. Looking closely, you can see Thomas Henderson talking to the referee and pointing to where Harris was interfered with." Dave commenting, "Henderson, yes, another one of the Dirty Dozen guys." Mark commenting, "Yes, that's right. But like you said, Dave, they didn't spend 5 minutes discussing it. They didn't review plays in 1975. They got back to the game. Dave commenting, "Exactly, Mark." Mark commenting, "I only bring it up because Vikings fans always say Drew Pearson pushed off. Look, football is a fast game and the referees aren't perfect. They will make mistakes and there will be bad calls in almost every game. Today we have instant replay and reviews, and there are still bad calls." Early in the third quarter, Johnny United's comments that the switchboards were all lit up at halftime with phone calls. Fans wanted to know why there wasn't an interference penalty against the Vikings, to which United's replied, "The refs missed the call." And for most fans, that was good enough. They just wanted to hear someone admit that it was a bad call. So like you said, Dave, you lived with it and moved on. Back to the game. 2 runs brought the ball to the 1-yard line, and on third down, running back Chuck Foreman punched it in for a touchdown. Fred Cox kicked the ball to the 10-yard line, and Preston Pearson returned it 25 yards. A 5-yard face mask penalty gave the Cowboys excellent field position at their 40-yard line. A pass to Newhouse gained 12 yards. 3 straight runs up the middle gave Dallas another first down at the Vikings' 36-yard line. On the next play, Staubach dropped back to pass, but strong pressure by tackles Alan Page and Doug Sutherland forced Staubach to run, and Carl Eller sacked him for a 2-yard loss. Dave commenting, "I'll say it again. Carl Eller had a tremendous first half in this game. Every time Staubach tried to roll out to the right, Eller was there to make the tackle. So he was pressuring Staubach and doing a great job of containing him." Mark commenting, "Yep, Eller was a thorn in the side of Staubach." The sack was followed by an 8-yard pass reception by tight end Gene Fugit. On 3rd and 4, Staubach was sacked again by none other than Carl Eller. Dallas was having success running up the middle on Minnesota, so one has to wonder why they didn't stick with it. Dave commenting, "I couldn't agree more, especially with Doug Dennison. He was a little shiftier than Preston Pearson, stronger at running up the middle, and having success. Pearson wouldn't gain much rushing yardage, but he was an excellent receiver out of the backfield." Mark commenting, "That's right. Pearson's best rushing season was in 1971, when he gained 605 yards with Pittsburgh. In his 6 years with Dallas, he only gained 1,207 yards rushing, but he gained 2,274 yards receiving, and many of those yards were first down conversions." Dave commenting, "That is true, but Landry liked to run Robert Newhouse, who had some excellent receiving yardage in the first half. I think sometimes he overplayed Newhouse, even when he wasn't gaining yardage. For instance, in Super Bowl 13, he ran Newhouse 8 times, and he only gained 3 yards. Meanwhile, Tony Dorsett, who gained 96 yards in that game, had only 16 carries." Mark commenting, "Newhouse had the best year of his career in 1975. He gained 930 yards rushing that season. He became the primary back because Calvin Hill joined the WFL after the 1974 season, and Walt Garrison retired. But you mentioned Super Bowl 13, and it was strange that Newhouse got the start in that game over Scott Laidlaw because Newhouse was injured. He had a big game against the Packers in Week 11 of that season, gaining over 100 yards. But then he got hurt. I think it was a thigh injury, and he barely played in the next 7 games. He had only 1 carry in the 2 playoff games." Anyway, back to the game. A 49-yard field goal attempt by Tony Fritsch was no good. Dave commenting, you mentioned Fritsch, and the Cowboys were the only team with a kicking coach. His name was Ben Adjanayan, and Ben would go to other countries on what they called the kicking caravan, scoping out soccer players. So they brought Fritsch back from Austria, where he worked as a mechanic for Mercedes-Benz. I always laugh at Bob Lilly's story about Dallas playing St. Louis, and Tony Fritsch was about to attempt the game-winning field goal. One of the Cardinals players, I think it was Larry Stallings, was trying to shake Tony's confidence. He was yelling things like, "You're a bum, Fritsch. You're gonna miss it. This kick is way too far for you." Lilly, who was lined up across from Stallings on the play, responded, "Save your breath, Larry. He can't understand a word of English." Mark commenting, great story, Dave. That brings us back to the topic of kickers. I have always wondered how the Vikings kicker, Fred Cox, managed to play 15 seasons for the same team. At that time, kickers were expendable. Even the best kickers, like Jan Stenerud, moved from team to team. I don't think Cox ever had a kickoff beyond the 10-yard line. We talked before about how the kickers of that era weren't that successful with field goals beyond 40 yards. Cox only made 38% of his attempts between 40 and 50 yards. Today, that would get you fired. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock the guy, because 38% at that time was probably considered pretty good. I just can't figure out how he never got traded like all the other kickers. Dave commenting, I think a lot of that had to do with Vikings coach Bud Grant. He didn't like the idea of switching kickers. Cox played from 1963 to 1977 and never missed a game. His best season was 1969, when he was successful on 70% of his field goal attempts, 26 out of 37. Side note, Cox became a chiropractor after retiring and invented the Nerf football. Mark commenting, okay, back to the game. The Vikings took possession on their 32-yard line. After a handoff to running back Chuck Foreman gained nothing, cornerback Mil Renfro intercepted a Fran Tarkenton pass, and Dallas took over at midfield. Up to this point in the game, the Doomsday defense had given up minimal yardage to the Vikings offense. Dave commenting, that's right. The Vikings weren't able to run the ball on Dallas. Fran Tarkenton was the Vikings' leading rusher at halftime. Middle linebacker Leroy Jordan was having a great game. And let's talk about Mil Renfro for a second. This guy shouldn't have had to wait as long as he did to get into the Hall of Fame. He went to 10 straight Pro Bowls in a row. That's incredible. Mark commenting, that's right. And that's back when it meant something, because the players voted on who made the Pro Bowl. A handoff to Robert Newhouse lost 4 yards, but 2 passes to Golden Richards brought the ball to the Vikings' 34-yard line. 3 straight runs left the Cowboys about a foot short of a first down, and the usually conservative Landry decided to go for it on 4th down. The gamble did not pay off, as linebacker Wally Hilgenberg tackled Doug Dennison for a 2-yard loss. The Purple People Eater defense was bending, but not breaking. Dave commenting, something went wrong on that 4th down play, Mark. Preston Pearson looks lost on that play. He didn't even block anyone. Mark commenting, I looked at the play, Dave, and Pearson ran to the left, and he looked back as if surprised that Dennison ran up the middle. When Dennison found no space in the middle, he bounced out and ran to his left, where Pearson was. Pearson did get a good block on defensive back Bobby Bryant, but the Vikings defense did an excellent job of pursuit, and Hilgenberg made the tackle. The only thing I could figure out is that Pearson thought Dennison would run to the left behind him. Although I'm not sure why he would have thought that, since it appears the play call was to go up the middle. But yeah, you're right. Something didn't go as planned. Minnesota took over on their 26-yard line. A run lost a yard, followed by an incompletion. A third down pass completion left the Vikings half a yard short of a first down, forcing a punt. Dallas took possession at their 22. After a run gained 4 yards, tight end Gene Fugit caught a short point. Let me try that again, Arnie. After a run gained 4 yards, tight end Gene Fugit caught a short pass and carried the tackler to get the first down. Staubach then connected with Preston Pearson on a short pass, and with some outstanding blocking in front of him, Pearson ran for 24 yards. Staubach dropped back to pass again and was pressured by Doug Sutherland, forcing him to run, and Carl Eller caught him for his 4th sack of the game. Staubach dropped back and was again met with pressure from the Purple Gang, forcing him to run for the sidelines to stop the clock. An incomplete pass on third down forced the Cowboys to punt. Minnesota took over on their 19, ran 2 plays for 6 yards, and the first half was over, with the Vikings holding on to a 7-0 lead. Up to this point, both defenses had played outstanding, and the hitting was intense. Dave commenting, "The 3 most significant things I took away from the first half were Carl Eller's play, the Cowboys' defense shutting down the Minnesota running game, and Doug Dennison's success running on the Vikings defense." Mark commenting, "I agree with you about Eller, but another guy who was having a good game on the Vikings defense was defensive tackle Doug Sutherland. You don't hear his name mentioned much when they talk about those great Purple People Eater defenses. The Cowboys defense shut down Chuck Foreman and the Vikings passing game. Fran Tarkington finished the first half with only 5 completions for 39 yards. Okay, that will conclude the first half of the 1975 playoff game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. Join us again next week, and we'll have the beginning of the third quarter. Thank you for listening. God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.